Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. What I'd like to do is provide you with a little bit of summary. Congratulations to making it this far in the course for graphing and solving, or solving and graphing, compound inequalities. Now, when we're solving and graphing compound inequalities, and what I basically want to do is just kind of run through the process real quick. What I talked about in the first video, again, was first identifying, what is your connector statement? Is that an and or an or statement, right? Make sure you identify which type of statement you are working with as you work through the problem. Then I think it's always helpful, especially when you're getting started with this, is to separate the inequalities into two separate inequalities. Therefore, then go ahead and solve each inequality separately, graph them separately, and then combine them into one graph by identifying if it's an and or an or statement. That will identify how you're going to merge them. So some common tips and tricks is exactly what I kind of went into. Separate your inequalities separately. Even though I know on the compound inequality and a lot of times it's very easy for us to be able to use your inverse operations, I just see a lot of students making mistakes from there that I think it's overall easy just to separate a compound inequality into two different inequalities if it's not already done for you. The next thing is align the graphs vertically, and I think this is very, very important when we're dealing with an and or an or, but especially when the and inequality. So let's say I have one inequality graph here. Let's say I have another inequality graph here, and then I'm going to make this my actual final inequality. So let's just say they're all 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I'll just go by ones here. Okay, so when we're graphing this, and let's say you have two different inequalities, and your first inequality you have, x is greater than -2, and then your other inequality you have x is less than or equal to 3. So when you graph each inequality, x is greater than -2 would look like this. And go here. Oops, I'm sorry. You want to have the next one, and then here to be your final one. And then my other inequality is x is less than or equal to -3. So I go -3, fill that in because it's less than or equal to, and then I'd graph over here. So when we're combining them, what I like about using this vertically is you can see that, remember, when we're combining an and inequality, we're only concerned about where they're true for both inequalities. So even the number 4 is true for this inequality, it's not true for this inequality. Even though the value -4 is true for this inequality, it's not true for that inequality. Or you could even say the inequality 2 is true for this inequality, but it's not true for that one since that's an open dot. So therefore, it's going to be between 2, and you could see 3, smother dot, and then I shade in between. All right? And you can do the same thing for an or inequality as well. Common mistakes would be not switching signs. Remember, when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you got to make sure you switch your signs. That is when you're working an inequality as together or when you have them separated, and as well as graphing in the wrong direction. And you guys can see when I graph this, I said this out loud, but a lot of times that will be helpful is to use test points. Going back to graphing one value inequality, use your test points to make sure we're graphing correctly. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is just a brief overview as well as some helpful tips and tricks and common mistakes for you for solving graphing compound inequalities. Thanks.